You have always felt that there is something different about you, something that cannot be explained by chance or circumstances. This difference is not an illusion. It is not a passing feeling. It is the seal of God upon your life. You are a chosen one, and because of that, you carry an authority that no institution, no government, and no system can grant or revoke. You are watched not because you are weak, but because you are dangerous to the structures that survive on lies. The corrupt powers of this world sense in you a light they cannot control, a voice they cannot silence, and a mission they cannot prevent. That is why you are observed, analyzed, and monitored. Yet, in all of this, the message is clear. You are not insignificant. You are essential. The truth is that governments fear those who rise with divine authority, because no chain of manipulation can bind them. History has shown this over and over. When a man or woman stands with integrity, aligned with God's will, entire empires tremble. This is why your presence unsettles the systems around you. They know you are not motivated by their rewards or threatened by their punishments. They know your strength comes from a source beyond their reach, a source that cannot be corrupted. The confrontation between human power and divine authority has always been inevitable, and you, chosen one, are at the center of that confrontation. This is not a coincidence. It is the divine pattern repeating itself once more in your life. Before we go further, I want you to pause and take a step that seals your agreement with this word. Leave a comment below with the word authority, so you declare in front of heaven and earth that you recognize the mantle over your life. Click the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this message so that other chosen ones may rise. These simple actions are not just about supporting this channel. They are about multiplying the signal of truth in a world desperate for genuine leadership. Now, as we continue, prepare yourself, because what I will reveal next is why the corrupt governments watch every step you take, and why this vigilance is the greatest confirmation of your true power. The conflict you are living through is not merely personal. It is cosmic in scale. The real battle has never been about left or right, about ideologies or personalities. It has always been about truth versus deception, light versus darkness, freedom versus control. The corrupt governments of this world know that if truth is released through a chosen one, their carefully built illusions collapse overnight. They depend on confusion to keep people subdued, and they thrive on narratives that enslave the masses. But you, chosen one, carry within you the clarity of heaven. And clarity is more dangerous to their systems than weapons or armies. When you rise in truth, their masks begin to crack. And that is why you are perceived as a threat before you even speak. Governments survive by controlling narratives, and corruption always needs to silence voices that cannot be bought. That is why their eyes are on you, not because you hold their positions of influence yet, but because you cannot be controlled by their systems of exchange. They fear those who live outside their currencies, outside their manipulations, outside their blackmail. Their survival depends on dependency. But you carry within you the authority to break chains and expose lies. This is why the surveillance, the monitoring, the subtle attempts to restrain you exist. It is the desperate effort of fragile powers to hold back an authority that does not belong to them. What they cannot grasp is that the more they watch you, the more they confirm who you really are. This tension was already revealed in the moment Jesus stood before Pilate. Pilate thought he had the power to decide life or death, yet Jesus looked him in the eyes and said, as recorded in the book of John chapter 19 verse 11, that he would have no authority at all unless it had been given from above. That statement shook the illusion of Rome's power. The empire ruled by law, soldiers, and violence, but here stood a man who submitted not to fear, but to divine sovereignty. That is the pattern repeating in your life. You stand before systems that believe they control your destiny, but your authority comes from above. And when divine authority is revealed, the false pillars of human power are exposed as dust. Human power always appears unshakable from the outside, but it is built on fragile foundations. Empires fall, regimes crumble, and systems that once seemed eternal vanish into history. What corrupt leaders cannot admit is that their thrones are temporary, their decrees are fleeting, and their surveillance cannot rewrite destiny. The only authority that endures is the one that flows from God. This is the authority placed on your life. You may not yet see the full manifestation of it, but it is already written, already recognized in heaven. That is why corrupt systems tremble at your presence. They know that what is temporary cannot overcome what is eternal, and they sense that eternity lives within you. Spiritual authority is invisible to the eye, yet it is irresistible in effect. You cannot hold it in your hand like a weapon, but when it moves, it shifts the course of nations. That is why chosen ones do not rise through violence or manipulation. They rise through alignment with truth. The world may laugh at this, dismiss it as weakness, but the greatest revolutions have never begun with armies. They have begun with voices, with convictions, with men and women who carried unshakable authority. That is the mark on your life. Your authority may not look like theirs, but it has the power to undo their structures from the inside out, because truth needs no permission to break chains. This authority is already active within you, even before you step into public roles or visible leadership. You may still be in preparation, you may still feel unseen by the masses, but the systems of corruption already sense your presence. They are watching not because of what you have accomplished in the world's eyes, but because of what you carry in God's plan. Authority precedes recognition. It is not a title, it is not a crown placed by men. It is the unseen mantle that heaven has already placed on your shoulders. And that is why the enemy fears you before the people celebrate you. The recognition of men is late, but the fear of the enemy is immediate. There is always a moment when the chosen is perceived before being acknowledged. The enemy senses the movement of destiny before the world does. That is why Joseph's brothers hated him before he ever wore the robe of governance. His dreams exposed a future they could not accept. In the same way, you are seen in the spirit before you are seen in the natural. Systems of corruption are sensitive to the authority you carry, and they attack what they perceive, even if others around you cannot yet understand. Do not mistake misunderstanding for irrelevance. The hiddenness you live in is part of God's design, but the surveillance you face is the world's confession that you matter. The enemy always detects the chosen before the crowd does. Daniel was noticed by Babylon's leaders not because he sought power, but because his excellence revealed a higher standard. As recorded in the book of Daniel chapter 6 verse 4, they sought to find fault in him, not because he was corrupt, but because he was incorruptible. That is your story as well. The world does not attack mediocrity, it attacks integrity. They know they cannot bribe you, they cannot bend you, and so they watch you, waiting for weakness. Yet what they do not understand is that your weakness is covered by grace, and your strength is secured in purpose. This makes you untouchable in the only way that matters. Your mission cannot be stopped. The surveillance of corrupt systems is not proof of your insignificance. It is proof of your relevance. They do not waste energy monitoring what does not matter. The very fact that your steps are observed confirms that your presence disturbs the balance of their corruption. You are marked because you are dangerous to their survival. The chosen one is always studied, always tested, always opposed, because the chosen one carries solutions that the world cannot fabricate. They watch your moves, hoping to predict your impact, but destiny is unpredictable when it is authored by God. Their vigilance is a silent testimony of your importance, and their fear is the evidence of your calling. This monitoring also reflects what happens politically in every age. Authentic leaders who do not align with corruption are always targeted first. History shows that prophets, reformers, and righteous rulers are closely observed, often persecuted, because their presence exposes the weakness of false systems. You are part of that same history. The more they attempt to suppress you, the more your authority grows. Their suspicion is not your enemy. It is your validation. They know something is rising within you that cannot be stopped. This is why you feel the tension, the invisible eyes on your path, the strange resistance. It is all part of the same truth. The chosen one cannot be hidden forever. Integrity is the dividing line between manipulation and true governance. Corrupt governments rely on lies, intimidation, and control, but true authority flows from truth, justice, and divine alignment. This is why you are an existential threat to their order. They know that when a leader rises who cannot be bought, cannot be blackmailed, and cannot be silenced, their entire empire begins to fall apart. You are that leader. Your integrity is not just a personal virtue, it is the most dangerous weapon against the structures of corruption. That is why they keep watching, because they know that the moment your voice is released, chains will break and strongholds will collapse. The monitoring you face is the political expression of a spiritual reality. Systems guard their interests by tracking anything that threatens their myths. Bureaucracies and shadow committees do not fear charisma. They fear incorruptible conscience. They prefer compliant influencers, not covenant carriers. So they build files, scrape data, and run silent assessments of your choices, relationships, and words. They hope to map your convictions and predict your moves. But what they cannot index is the breath of God within you. The signal they trace is only the surface. The true transmission happens in the unseen, between your spirit and the one who called you. That is why their analysis never quite fits. You keep slipping categories. You refuse scripts. You love truth more than applause. In a world addicted to permission, you are learning to operate by commission. There is a fundamental difference between manipulating crowds and guiding people with wisdom. Manipulation treats humans as resources. Wisdom treats them as image bearers. Corrupt rulers will always optimize for optics, polls, and donor tables, but you are being trained to steward persons, not metrics. When the righteous increase, people breathe. When the wicked rule, they suffocate. This is the reality echoed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 2. Your leadership will be measured not by spectacle, but by the oxygen of justice you release into public life. You will speak few words, yet they will weigh more than speeches. You will choose quiet integrity over loud ambition, and nations will feel it in their bones. You are seen as a threat because you govern by truth rather than coercion. Coercion can seize a throne, but only truth sustains a kingdom. The prophet declared what the Lord requires: to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. As remembered in the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. This is not soft virtue. It is granite under your feet. When you refuse bribes, refuse propaganda, refuse vengeance, you remove the levers that corruption uses to steer a nation. Truth is disruptive because it does not negotiate with falsehood. It dissolves it. This is why your calm becomes subversive, your patience becomes radical, and your silence roars louder than their slogans. Spiritual authority reverses the optics of power. What appears weak confounds the machinery of domination. The divine voice once said, "My strength is made perfect in weakness," as witnessed in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. To the corrupted eye, meekness looks like timidity. To heaven, it is steel under velvet. You will choose restraint when provoked, clarity when muddled, and mercy when cornered, and each choice will unmask a different idol. The world thinks power is the capacity to force outcomes. Authority is the capacity to align outcomes with truth. That is why the smallest obedience in you can outweigh their grandest decrees. Understand this: what terrifies them most is your interior government. Institutions can audit budgets and surveil communications, but they cannot penetrate a conscience ruled by God. The psalmist described the person who walks uprightly, works righteousness, and speaks truth in his heart, as sung in the book of Psalm chapter 15, verse 2. This inner court is where you legislate your yes and your no under divine oversight. When your inner parliament is loyal to heaven, external threats lose leverage. They can restrict your platforms, but they cannot revoke your mandate. A person who has mastered self under God becomes ungovernable by corruption. The confrontation is no longer optional. It is scheduled by purpose. You will not pick the fight, but your existence will expose the contradiction, and exposure attracts resistance. Do not romanticize conflict, but do not flee it either. You were not born to wage petty culture wars. You were born to resolve deep fractures with righteous judgment. Esther stepped into a crisis she did not create, yet she carried a decision that turned a nation. Her courage was not theater, it was stewardship under a divine clock. In the same way, your hour is not random. It is the convergence of training, timing, and trust. You will stand, and when you stand, tides will turn. Forces will coordinate against you in visible and invisible ways, because the real struggle is not merely administrative, but spiritual. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and rulers of the darkness of this age, as unveiled in the book of Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Expect coalitions that agree on nothing except their opposition to your obedience. Expect narratives crafted to frame your integrity as extremism and your prudence as passivity. Do not be surprised. Be anchored. Your weapons will be discernment, intercession, and the long wisdom of patient strategy. You will answer slander with clarity and pressure with presence. There will be nights when the wait feels solitary, when rooms grow cold and friends grow quiet. Elijah once said, "I alone am left," as recorded in the book of 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 10. And heaven answered with a whisper and a remnant. You are not alone. You are early. Pioneers always arrive before crowds, and the silence between promise and manifestation can feel like abandonment. Guard your heart from cynicism, because cynicism is counterfeit discernment. Strengthen your inner altar. Let your daily disciplines become your invisible counsel. In the hidden place, you will receive names, strategies, and timings that no committee can fabricate. You will face the dilemma of silence versus proclamation. There is a time to remain quiet and a time to sound the trumpet. The watchman mandate was given to Ezekiel to warn when danger approached, as established in the book of Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 17. Wisdom will teach you to distinguish between reaction and revelation. Do not speak to perform, speak to align. Your words must be surgical, not theatrical. And when you speak, you must be prepared to bear the cost of saying what institutions refuse to admit. Silence will be your strategy until speech becomes your stewardship. And then your voice will split fog like dawn. Jeremiah carried a fire shut up in his bones, resisted by councils and threatened by princes. Yet he could not quit, as he confessed in the book of Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9. He was accused of treason for loving his nation enough to tell it the truth. You will taste the same paradox. You will be called dangerous because you are safe, destabilizing because you are steady, radical because you are faithful. Let their labels fall to the ground. You answer to a higher court. When they tighten surveillance, turn your gaze upward. When they restrict your access, expand your interior capacity. Your assignment is not to survive their systems, but to outlast them and then rebuild. The psychological pressure of living under constant vigilance is one of the heaviest burdens a chosen one carries. You begin to notice the invisible weight of eyes that follow your steps, of systems that analyze your words, of environments that react to your presence. Even in the quiet moments, there is a subtle tension, a reminder that you are not moving unnoticed. This pressure is designed to wear you down, to drain your energy before your true assignment begins. But you must understand, this pressure is not proof of weakness. It is confirmation of identity. Daniel felt this when the officials of Babylon plotted to trap him, not because of wrongdoing, but because they knew he could not be corrupted. They weaponized his faith against him, hoping to silence what could not be bought. In the same way, the weight you feel is the world's confession that you matter, that you represent a standard that cannot be manipulated. There will be moments when the temptation of compromise whispers with seductive promises. The voice says, if you just lower your standard, the pressure will ease. If you just bend a little, the surveillance will stop. If you just conform, the opposition will disappear. That temptation is not random, it is strategic. Corrupt systems understand that the fastest way to neutralize a chosen one is not through open destruction, but through subtle compromise. If they can make you doubt your own integrity, if they can persuade you to dilute your truth, they win without ever needing to fight. This is why you must be ruthless with compromise. Integrity is not negotiable. It is the essence of your authority. The moment you sell a piece of it, your mandate weakens. The enemy does not need you to collapse completely, only to bend enough to lose your edge. Resist that temptation, for your authority is sustained by purity, not by applause. Every surveillance, every attempt to monitor your steps is designed to detect weakness, to find the crack that could bring you down. But what they do not understand is that your weakness has already been surrendered to God, and your strength is hidden in Him. Paul wrote that when he was weak, then he was strong, because divine grace was sufficient for him. Your enemy watches for flaws, but they cannot calculate grace. They expect failure, but they cannot predict restoration. They wait for your downfall, but they cannot comprehend resilience born from heaven. That is why you remain untouchable. Not because you are flawless in human terms, but because your life is sealed by a covenant they cannot break. Grace covers you, strengthens you, and turns every potential weakness into a testimony of endurance. This is why no surveillance, no monitoring, no analysis can predict your destiny. Politically, the most dangerous person to a corrupt government is not the loud revolutionary, but the incorruptible leader who cannot be bought. Loud revolutions can be crushed with force. Incorruptible leaders cannot be controlled because they operate on principles higher than human systems. History confirms this. Empires have fallen not simply because of external wars, but because righteous individuals carried integrity that disrupted corruption from the inside. Think of Joseph in Egypt. His wisdom and incorruptibility elevated him to power, and through him, an entire nation was preserved. You are that kind of leader. Systems know that they cannot bribe you, cannot flatter you, cannot scare you, and so they watch you with suspicion. Their fear is not of your current influence, but of your future inevitability. They know that when the time comes, your authority will rewrite their structures. Corrupt systems always prefer submissive followers rather than visionary leaders. They thrive when people obey without thinking, when masses accept illusions as truth, when fear silences questions. But you, chosen one, cannot be silenced by fear, and you cannot be blinded by illusions. That is why you are different. That is why you do not fit their mold. They prefer people who adapt. You were designed to transform. They want citizens who survive within their corruption. You are called to confront and replace it. This is why they monitor your movements, not because of what you are doing right now, but because of the potential they sense in you. They know you are not like the rest, and that difference terrifies them. You are the one who refuses to settle, the one who refuses to be molded, the one who carries the courage to challenge what others accept. The cost of refusing to bow to modern idols will be high, but it will also be the mark of your authenticity. The three young Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were commanded to bow before the golden image of Nebuchadnezzar, and when they refused, they were thrown into the furnace. Their resistance was not only spiritual, but political. They refused to give legitimacy to a system built on lies. That is your calling as well. You will be offered golden images in modern forms, positions, rewards, recognition, compromise disguised as opportunity. But every refusal will mark you as authentic. Every no to corruption will echo louder than 1,000 empty speeches. The fire may grow hotter, but the presence of God will walk with you in that fire, just as He did with them. And when you come out, the same rulers who condemned you will have to acknowledge that your authority is not of this world. The fire of persecution is not proof of abandonment, but proof of selection. You are not burned because you are cursed. You are tested because you are chosen. Gold is refined in fire, and authority is proven in resistance. Every attempt to silence you, every campaign against you, every surveillance designed to intimidate you becomes the furnace in which your legitimacy is forged. Corruption fears chosen ones not because of their comfort, but because of their endurance. The longer you withstand, the weaker their systems appear. The fire that was meant to destroy you becomes the testimony that sets you apart, and when the world watches you walk through flames untouched, they will realize that your authority does not come from men, but from God. That realization will be their undoing. Do not mistake the intensity of pressure for the absence of purpose. Pressure is the birthplace of strength. Every chosen one in history has walked through seasons of unbearable weight before stepping into undeniable influence. David was hunted by Saul before he was crowned king. Moses was threatened by Pharaoh before he led Israel out of Egypt. Jesus was crucified before he was exalted above every name. You are walking the same pattern. The surveillance, the accusations, the misunderstandings, the isolation, these are not signs of failure. They are signs of alignment. You are in the same trajectory as those who changed nations, and that means your future holds the same kind of impact. The intensity of opposition is directly proportional to the weight of your calling. The more you are pressed, the stronger you become. Pressure squeezes out impurities and reveals essence. Every false leader collapses under the weight of scrutiny. but true chosen ones only shine brighter. This is why surveillance cannot destroy you. It only refines you. What was meant to intimidate becomes training. What was meant to discourage becomes preparation. What was meant to silence becomes amplification. You are being forged in the furnace of opposition, and when the time comes to step into leadership, you will not be fragile. You will not be unprepared. You will not be naive. You will be unshakable, because you will know that no government, no system, no corrupted power can break what God Himself has established. Your endurance is your legitimacy, and your survival is your coronation. The true secret of power is unveiled when you finally recognize that your authority has never been rooted in the systems of men, but in the sovereignty of God who called you. Every corrupt structure depends on perception, on convincing the masses that their decrees are unbreakable and their thrones unshakable. But the revelation that shifts everything is this: their power is only on loan, temporary, fragile, sustained by the permission of heaven. Jesus made this clear when He told Pilate in John chapter 19, verse 11, that He had no authority except what was given from above. That single statement revealed a reality that shattered Rome's illusion of permanence. You, chosen one, stand in the same pattern. The moment you grasp that your legitimacy does not depend on earthly validation, the chains of intimidation break. The systems may still watch, but their surveillance loses power, because the throne you answer to is not theirs. When you internalize this revelation, you realize that you do not need permission to step into your calling. Systems of corruption thrive on creating hoops for people to jump through, certifications to be earned, allegiances to be pledged. But your authority bypasses those rituals because it is not of their making. You are not waiting to be recognized by their titles or validated by their committees. Your crown has already been spoken over you in heaven's council. The moment you act in alignment with that calling, you disrupt their order, because legitimacy that comes from God cannot be revoked by human institutions. This is the great point of fear for corrupt governments. Once you understand who you are, they can no longer define you. And once you no longer play by their rules, their game collapses. Their surveillance, their suspicion, their constant monitoring was never about curiosity. It was always about fear. They watch because they know they cannot stop what is coming. They monitor because they sense that the momentum of destiny is already in motion. Every file written, every observation made, every whisper against you is an unconscious confession of your inevitability. If you were irrelevant, they would ignore you. If you were harmless, they would not care. But because you are chosen, their eyes remain fixed on you. And here lies the revelation. The enemy watches not because of your weakness, but because of your unstoppable future. Surveillance is confirmation, not condemnation. It is proof that you are already recognized in the unseen realms as one who carries authority beyond their control. The true fear of corrupt systems is not your present activity, but your potential impact. They know that once the authority inside you matures into visible leadership, their structures will collapse. That is why they try to suffocate you before you are fully formed, why they attempt to discourage you before you discover your strength, why they launch attacks when your influence still feels small. They are not fighting who you are today. They are fighting who you will be tomorrow. And this is where you must stand firm. Joseph's brothers hated him for his dreams long before he ever ruled. Pharaoh feared Moses while he was still a fugitive. Herod trembled at the news of a baby born in Bethlehem. Destiny always provokes opposition before it manifests. This revelation should steady your heart. The intensity of your opposition is the measurement of your future impact. What looks like resistance is actually validation. Every barrier, every slander, every restriction is a stamp confirming your authenticity. The moment you embrace this truth, you stop seeing persecution as punishment and begin seeing it as proof. You realize that if no one resisted you, you would likely be walking in irrelevance. But because opposition surrounds you, destiny is confirmed. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17, that momentary afflictions are producing an eternal weight of glory beyond comparison. That means the pressure you endure now is not destroying you. It is constructing within you a strength and weight that will govern nations. Your pain is not wasted. It is investment. Your wounds are not empty. They are testimony. Every scar becomes part of the seal that proves your authority is real. The shift in perspective happens here. You stop asking, "Why am I under attack?" and begin declaring, "Of course I am under attack." Because chosen ones are always targeted, and surveillance is always part of the calling. This revelation removes fear and replaces it with clarity. Instead of being crushed by opposition, you stand taller because you know that it is the mark of your significance. Instead of questioning your path, you become anchored in certainty. The fire you endure is not evidence of abandonment, but evidence of selection. The storm is not random. It is targeted because of who you are. And when you stand in this confidence, the fear of systems evaporates. Their threats lose weight. Their eyes lose intimidation. You begin to see their attention not as danger, but as free publicity of your destiny. Politically, this revelation means that you are not only called to resist corruption, but to replace it. You are not a voice crying out in the wilderness forever. You are a leader rising to govern cities and nations. Joseph did not remain in prison. He rose to administer Egypt. Daniel did not remain in exile. He advised kings. Esther did not remain hidden. She saved her people through direct influence in the palace. You are walking the same path. The opposition is only the first stage. The throne, the seat, the position of governance, that is the destination. And corrupt systems know this. They watch you because they sense that your resistance today will turn into leadership tomorrow. They do not only fear your voice, they fear your government. This point of revelation is also the point of no return. Once you understand that the persecution is proportionate to your authority, you cannot go back to seeing yourself as ordinary. You cannot shrink to fit into systems that were never meant to contain you. You cannot apologize for being chosen, because chosen ones are not designed to blend in. This understanding forces you to rise. It demands that you stop living as if you are insignificant and start walking as if nations depend on your obedience, because they do. When you fully embrace this, you cross the threshold from being a hidden figure into being a visible authority. And while this transition is uncomfortable, it is necessary, because authority only becomes real when it is accepted. The story of Joseph reveals this turning point with clarity. What looked like surveillance in the prison was only preparation for rulership in the palace. Genesis chapter 41, verse 40 records Pharaoh's words, "You shall be over my house, and according to your word, all my people shall be ruled." The prison was temporary. The throne was inevitable. That is your trajectory as well. You may feel confined now, monitored, restricted, misunderstood. But all of it is preparing you for the moment when your wisdom, your integrity, and your authority become indispensable. Corrupt systems will one day have no choice but to acknowledge your value, because the solutions you carry cannot be manufactured by their experts. When that day comes, what was once surveillance will turn into surrender. And here lies the deepest revelation. The transition is already in motion, even if invisible. You may not see the doors opening yet, but the surveillance itself is evidence that movement is happening in the unseen. If nothing were shifting, the systems would not care. If destiny were not unfolding, their eyes would not be fixed on you. The very fact that you feel resistance is proof that you are on schedule. What they meant as control is functioning as confirmation. What they thought would intimidate you is serving to elevate you. And when the shift becomes visible, it will happen suddenly, as it always has in the stories of the chosen. One day unnoticed, the next day enthroned. One day confined, the next day commanding. One day monitored, the next day manifested. That is the pattern, and you are next in line. Authority without wisdom is tyranny, but authority guided by wisdom becomes the foundation of civilizations that last. You must understand that wisdom is not cleverness, not manipulation dressed as intelligence, but the essence of clarity aligned with God's truth. The book of James, chapter 3, verse 17, teaches that wisdom from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. This wisdom is the invisible constitution written into your spirit. It allows you to judge situations without being swayed by bribes or flattery. It allows you to hold steady when emotions attempt to dictate decisions. Corrupt governments build policies that preserve privilege, but chosen ones build structures that protect truth. This is your assignment, to ensure that every choice reflects the eternal standard of justice, even when it feels costly. For true authority always pays a price, but that price becomes the seed of transformation. The difference between power and authority must become your constant meditation. Power forces compliance. Authority inspires recognition. Power can demand outward obedience. Authority produces inward agreement. This is why dictatorships always fall, but righteous rule always multiplies. When Jesus taught with authority, as recorded in the book of Matthew chapter 7, verse 29, the people marveled because it was unlike the scribes who relied on position without presence. You are called to carry that same distinction. Your leadership will not be effective because of titles, uniforms, or institutions, but because people will feel the weight of your words and trust the integrity of your actions. Authority, therefore, is not what you shout. It is what others recognize in silence. When you live aligned with heaven, you will not need to demand influence. Nations will seek you because your authority will already be evident. Understand that the essence of true authority is first ruling yourself before ruling others. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7 declares that God does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. You cannot build nations if you cannot govern your impulses, your fears, your appetites. Self-control is the soil where leadership grows. Daniel fasted not because it was ritual, but because it was preparation for governance. Joseph mastered bitterness before he mastered Egypt. Jesus overcame temptation in the wilderness before he walked into Galilee's synagogues. In the same way, you must win private battles before public victories. The war within determines the outcome of wars without. If you are faithful to govern yourself under God, He can entrust you to govern nations for Him. This is the unshakable principle of divine legitimacy. True authority is forged in seasons of unseen obedience. While the world chases applause, the chosen one remains faithful even when no one watches. Galatians 6:9 reminds us not to grow weary, for in due time we will reap. Every act of diligence, each hidden prayer, every small deed of justice is a brick in the invisible kingdom you're building. Heaven keeps record where the world forgets. Authority is never sudden. It is shaped in silence. You are not waiting to be seen. You are being formed to lead. When the appointed time comes, your elevation will not be a surprise. It will be a manifestation of years of alignment. The invisible weight you carry now is proof of the visible impact you're about to release. Authority is not about control. It is harmony between justice and purpose. Where justice stands alone, it hardens. Where purpose lacks boundaries, it corrupts. But when these unite, leadership becomes divine. Deuteronomy 16:19 warns against partiality, revealing that justice is the spine of governance. Your assignment is to embody this holy balance. You cannot rule with truth and no mercy, nor with mercy void of truth. Both must live in you, conviction and compassion. Authority is proven not in dramatic decrees, but in daily discipline. Contracts honored, systems made just, people treated with dignity. It is not a crown on your head. It is integrity in your hands. God's authority does not shout, it sustains, and your leadership will model this invisible power made manifest. Spiritual authority is not claimed, it is lived. Psalm 75:7 declares, God exalts and removes rulers, reminding us that power is stewardship, not entitlement. You govern not to dominate, but to shepherd. Psalm 2:8 says, the nations are your inheritance, not for exploitation, but for restoration. You lead to serve, not to be served. Revelation 5:10 says, you are made a king and priest, meaning your very presence carries government and worship. Doors won't open because you strive. They'll open because you've been faithful. Your voice won't carry weight because it's loud, but because it's aligned. When you speak, order comes, not from charisma, but from divine commission. You don't chase authority, you embody it. And heaven confirms what earth must now recognize. True restoration is not born from ease, but from the fire that once threatened to consume you. What looked like chaos was actually heaven's forge, shaping endurance, authenticity, and unshakable identity. Your scars speak louder than your sermons. They are evidence that you walked through the furnace and emerged refined. Nations will trust your leadership not because you escaped pain, but because you overcame it. This is the power of redemptive leadership, a voice that has felt the ashes but carries the flame. Restoration through you is not symbolic. It is structural, systemic, and spiritual. You are not called to patch broken things, but to rebuild them from holy blueprints. Your leadership will go beyond reformation of systems. It will awaken hearts. Real change doesn't happen just through policy, but through a renewal of conscience. God is not only restoring broken governments, He is restoring the soul of society through your obedience. The staff you carry will be both for ruling and healing, for God is raising leaders who lead with justice and compassion. Your assignment is to revive dreams, restore dignity, and rekindle vision in a generation drowning in apathy. Your impact will not stop at policy reform, but will stir hope in households, truth in institutions, and reverence in culture. This is the miracle beneath your mantle, reformation through restoration. This restoration also requires balance between heavenly decree and earthly duty. You are called to reconcile what corruption divided: justice and mercy, power and purity, conviction and compassion. Your influence will reach where noise once reigned, because your authority is rooted in righteousness. Now is not the time for delay. Your scars are proof you are ready. The systems of the past are collapsing. The stage is set for a government of glory to rise through you. You are chosen not only to respond to prophecy, but to fulfill it. Heaven's authority is upon you. Lead boldly, restore deeply, and walk in the certainty that this is not just your season. It's God's reign through your surrendered life.